Okay, today's daf is really classic kachim. This is like as we said yesterday in share, they asked the question that why the Masechta Nazir part of Seder Nashim really should be part of Seder Kachim, and now you're going to find out why. Okay, a lot of these things that we know about, but it's always good to remind ourselves. So the Gemara in Daf Tez Zayin and Tamura says the following: that there are 5 chatas shemesos. Okay, there's a chatas that it passed by its time, its year has passed. There's a chatas that Vlad chatas, the child of a chatas, right? There's a tmuras chatas, the tmur of a chatas. There's chatas she kipra ba'aleha, where you separated a chatas, it got lost, you brought another one in and you found the original. And predominantly what we're dealing with is chatas she mesa ba'aleha. A chatas with what? Where the owner died. And since the owner died, no longer is the kapar necessary. So paralleling the chatas she mesa ba'aleha is the nazira whose husband has been made for the naziris, where she separated her carbon, made for the naziris. So we said yesterday that the Mishnah said that is tamus. You let it die. By the way, you're not allowed to be mafsid kachim b'yodayim. So you're not allowed to kill it. You go ahead and you allow it to die. You starve it to death. It seems to be a bit inhumane, but the truth is you're not allowed to be mafsid kachim b'yodayim. So the way that they would kill it is they would put it in a corral or someplace and they would not feed it. That's the unfortunate demise of these chatos. So we saw in the Mishnah, what happens, forget about if you went ahead and separated the animals. What happens if you separated money? You separated money and you designated the money. In other words, you take $100, you take a third is for the chatas, a third is for the shlamim, and a third is for the oila. So we said, what did you do yesterday? Well, the oila you bring as a carbon oila, the shlamim you bring as a carbon shlamim. We discussed yesterday that carbon shlamim is going to be limited to the Shalmei Nazir, which is a day and a night. And in addition, you won't bring lechem accompanying that. We spoke about that yesterday. However, the chatas, you have money. What do you do with it? So since in parallel it would die, you take the money and you put it in the Yam HaMelech. That's when it's mifurashos. What happens if it's stumais, meaning you separated the money for the karbonis, but you didn't designate how the money is to be spent. You separated for the carbon of the naziris. So then we said that yiplul in a dava. That money is going to go in a dava. You're going to go ahead and use that money to buy carbon oilos, and the oilos will go ahead and they will be brought al kayetz mizbeach when the mizbeach is quiet. Right? It'll be like the dessert of the mizbeach, and that's what we're holding. Okay. Now, the Gemara is going to ask a kasha, a very, very powerful kasha. In this stumos, you may not know where it is, but you know represented in the stumos is a carbon chatas. Represented in the stumos is a carbon oila, and represented in the stumos is a carbon shlamim. How in the world could you go ahead and bring this in a dava if some of the money has to be used as a chatas, and a chatas is going to misa? So really, this taruvos, you should not be able to go ahead and bring them all as a carbon oila. After all, part of it is a chatas. Who I think says taisris, you could have asked, part of it's a shlamim. And a shlamim is not kulay kolol, it's also not totally burnt. So what's going on over here? How could the Mishnah say you're taking money that even though you don't know where it is, but you know in that money there's a chatas and there's a shlamim, and now you're bringing it all as a carbon oila? That's the Gemara's kasha. We're going to have 2 derachim. One, that Rabbi Yochanan, it's a halacha l'mosh misinai, that when you have money that's stumos and that mixed together, you bring them as an adava. In other words, it's not a svara, it's a messiah we have from Moshe Sinai. We're going to have Rabbi Reish Lakish says it's a pasuk. Reish Lakish is going to say it's a pasuk, and we're going to dash in the pasuk. The Gemara will ask, what do you need a pasuk for if it's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai? That's what the Gemara is going to go ahead and ask. Okay, so let's begin the daf. We're in the last line on Chaf Dalit Amid Beis. The last line on Chaf Dalit Amid Beis. What do you need? Okay. Says the Gemara now, you see that little gimel over there? It's the Bach. The Bach says, Meis, hoyuloi mois, stumim yivlun adava. So obviously you would think without reading this quickly that it's going back on our Mishnah. In fact, it's not, because it says, hoyulo mois stumim. Our Mishnah is speaking about hoyulo mois stumim. Our Mishnah is speaking about a nazira. So this, in fact, Tosfos points out, is going on a Mishnah in Me'ilah. But the same problem you'd have in the Mishnah Meila, you have by us. So let's say you had money that was not designated, was set aside. It was, but Yipul in a Dava. Fred the Gemara on Daf Chaf Heyam and Aleph, Ba'alod the Mechatas Mu'uravim Bahen. You have the worth of the chatas in them. So how could you bring it as a carbon? It has to go and die. Who then you could have said Taisus the shlom is mixed in, which is not kulei kolol, which is not burnt. So Rabbi Yochanan, halacha he ben Nazir, says Rabbi Yochanan, it's halacha l'moshe Sinai that stumim, they go ahead and you use them for what? For the dava. No, it's that there's halacha l'moshe Sinai. There's no svara behind it. You're right. In svara, it should be mixed in. You should not be able to go ahead and bring it as an adava. Halacha Moshe Sinai, you're going to bring it as an adava. So that makes things very easy. Okay. So Reish Lakish says something else. Says Reish Lakish, the following pasuk. The pasuk in Vayikra Chaf Beis, pasuk Yud Ches. What does it say? Vayikra Chaf Beis Yud Ches. Daber al Aroin vel Bono vel Kol Bnei Yisrael v'mata leim. Ish mi Beis Yisrael. Umenager b'Yisrael, asher yakriv karbono, l'chol nidareihem, u'l'chol nidvaisam, asher yakrivu l'Hashem la'oila. Okay, so the pasuk says that speak to the Bnei Yisrael that any carbon that they bring for any neder or any nedava, asher yakrivu, that they're going to bring. So a neder is hare alai, a nedava is hare zu, yakrivu l'Hashem. Okay, so therefore it has to be from a zacha. This is what the pasuk says. Now, what does it mean? L'chol nidreim u'l'chol nidvaisam. What does that mean? That this pasuk l'chol nidreim u'l'chol nidvaisam. HaTorah Omar moiser neder. If you have anything left over from a neder, yiel in a dava. So a person said harei alai, and then this neder turns into an adava. That you go ahead, you bring as an oila, you bring as a carbon oila. So now, in fact, a nazir is not a neder. So here's what you want to tell me, guys, the application. This carbon, which had been a neder, right, that now you can't bring because it's left over, because she's not a nazira anymore, bring it as an adava. What kind of adava? An oila. Bring as an oila. So I have a pasuk that tells me when once upon a time it was a neder, now it turns into an adava. That carbon should be an oila. Application by us. When she was in a zira, it was a neder. Then it became an adava. Go bring it as an oila. Not the Gemara is going to ask her, what does Rabbi Lakish do with Allah Moshe Sinai, right? But again, that's the limud. Now the question is, where's the neder by a nazir? When you go ahead, it's a chiyuv. When you become a nazir, you have to bring the oila shlamim and chatas. And the answer is, guys, these come about as a result of a neder. Ish kiyafli lindo neder nazir lahazal Hashem. What leads you into the carbon is the neder, the kabbalah's naziris, that the nazar went ahead and accepted. So therefore, based upon that, so this neder, this is the limud. This neder now turns into an adava, and now you bring it as the carbon oil. That's the pasuk. Good. So you have two pasukim. You have two limudim. Rabbi Yochanan's halach l'mishmi Sinai, and you have Reish Lakish's pasuk. Now Bishleim Rabbi Yochanan, very good because Rabbi Yochanan, the Omar who's of the opinion. Halacha he ben Nazir, it's a nachma Nazir, amtolahaki, stumim in, mufurashim loy. Therefore, stumim in, mufurashim loy. Meaning, as we spoke out in the Mishnah, if it's stumim, then they go l'nedava. If it's mufurashim, meaning you had taken the $100 and divided it up, this third for a chatas, this third for a noila, this third for a shlamim, then the chatas dies. Read the Gemara, so Bishleim Rabbi Yochanan, I understand the distinction that what the stumim for Rashim Loi, because the Allah Moshe Sinai was limited to what to what to this case. Elul Reish Lakish l'chol nedreim l'chol nedvaisam ma'ir yistumim afilu mifurashim. Right. So according to Reish Lakish, is this a neder? Yeah. Is it now a nedava? Yeah. So why should there be a distinction whether you separate it or you didn't separate it? If your source is once upon a time was a neder, and then it automatically becomes an adava, the pasuk clearly says it's an oila. So I separated money for chatas, oil, and shlamim. I didn't do anything with the money. This money is a neder of my naziris. The naziris now is finished. Now it becomes an adava. So why in the world, even if it's Mufurashim, why don't we bring what's the carbon oila? That's the kasha on Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan, you're limited. The halacha Moshe Sinai was only stated by stumim. It was not stated by Mufurashim. So I'm limited to what? To stumim. Masha'en came. It's I can plug into the pasuk ned and adava. I can plug in Mufurashim the same way I can plug in the same way I plug in stumim. I can plug in Mufurashim. So why don't you bring this in a dava? Why does the chatas have to go to Lamisa, right? Why does the chatas have to go to Lamisa? And why does the shlamim not have to be bought for a day? That's the Gemara's kasha. And for the Gemara, Amarava, Mifurashim lo yimotzes amit. You can't possibly say what Mifurashim. In other words, I'm going to have a pasuk that tells me that this chatas has to die. And since this chatas Mifurashim has to die, it can't go for a carbon. Where? We have a psak from the Tana Rabbi Shmuel. Now, to do the Tana Rabbi Shmuel, let's see a pasuk. Okay, so you have over here. Here's the pasuk. Okay, Rak kodshecha asher it's pasuk chavav. Rak kodshecha asher yilecha. The kodshim that is to you, unidorecha, and your nidorim, tisa, you should carry, uvasa, and you should bring it, elamakam ashayikra Hashem, to the place Hashem says. And what should you do with these things, this kodshim and this nidorecha? Vasisa olasecha, habasav adam on mizbeach Hashem, you bring it on mizbeach. So, whatever this pasuk is discussing, kodshecha and nidorecha, you should bring them as a carbon oila. That's what. And be aware that it says lashon of rak. Rak means only. Now, this can't be speaking about regular oila or regular shlamim, because regular oila, regular shlamim, we have a whole parsha in Vayikra, in the beginning of Vayikra. So this pasuk in the Devarim that we're describing over here is speaking about unique situations. We're speaking about the vlad of a chatos, or the tmura of an asham. We're speaking about, we know that a carbon oila and a carbon asham are only male animals. A chatas is only a female predominantly. There are certain exceptions, and shlamim can be both. So a vlad of an animal can only be one of two. It can only be a chatas, it can only be a shlamim. A tmura can be any of them, correct? So now here's the limud. We're going to see that this pasuk is going to tell me there's no way you can bring a chatas, and therefore I'm going to exclude from Reish Lakish's limud mifurashim that you could possibly bring them as an adava, as an oila. So says the Gemara Amarava, your question, like Reish Lakish, your question is, why can't you go ahead and since this once upon a time was a neder, now it's an adava, why can't you bring them out as a carbon oila? On that it says leimatzas amrit. Why? Kvar paska tanad Rabbi Shmuel. Rakot shecha yilecha. Now, what are we speaking about? Your kodshim and your nedarim. You know what this is speaking about? Not your classic oila, not your classic shlamim. It's speaking about the child of a carbon, the tamura of a carbon. Right? What should you do with them? Mata kantom, tisa, you should carry them. Uvasa elamakam Hashem. Okay, you should go there and bring them up to Hashem. Now, what are you going to do when you bring them up to Hashem? Are you going to let them starve to death over there? Guys, outside, guys, Vlad Chatas, what's the din? Starves to death. Tamuras Chatas, what's the din? Starves to death. So you might think the Vlad of a Shlamim and the Tamura of an Oila also. It just says the pasuk, bring him up to the place. Bring him up to a Beis HaBechira, to the Beis HaMikdash, and let him starve. That's what you might think. Talmud Loimar, what does the next, right? What does the pasuk say? So withhold food and drink that should die. Talmud Loimar, the next pasuk, so therefore, again, we're going ahead. We're dashing this pasuk, guys. This pasuk now is telling me, Rak kodshecha, your kodshim, your nedaba, your what, your vladais kodshim, asher yilachon derecha, right? That or your tmuras kodshim, tisa, you should take them uvasel amalkam mashiv Hashem. And what do you do once you get there? You let them die like a vlad chatas and tmuras chatas. The asisa oila secha habas adam. What do? You make them into a carbon oila. you make them into a carbon oila. Okay? Now, that's by an oila and a shlamim. Says the Gemara. Very good. Just like you noig an oila, noig b'tmurasa, you should be noig with the tmura of an oila. So the tmura and oila is also brought as a carbon oila. Just like you noig with a shlamim, noig b'vladehem, so to the vlad of a shlamim. Notice, guys, vlad of shlamim, because it can be a female, not vlad oila. Again, that's just a little nuance over here. So in other words, we're told the tamur of an oila will be an oila. The vlad of a shlamim, who didn't tamur a shlamim, would also be a shlamim. So therefore, I would say, I would think, af vlad chatos utmuras asham kain. I might think the vlad chatos and tmuras chatos, tmuras asham. Again, an asham can't be a vlad; it's a male. So I might think that the vlad chatos you also bring as an oila or as a chatos. I might think tmuras asham you also bring as an asham, just like you bring the oila and the shlamim as an oila shlamim. Hamad loima rak. It says rak. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. These are the words of Rabbi Yishmael. So the only thing we need from this whole brisa is that a chatos cannot be brought as an oila. Rak. You can't bring the vlad of a chatos, who are in any other four chatos, you can't bring them as an oila. So Reish Lakish, you had a kasha, let you Reish Lakish, who learned from neder, my neder, that becomes an adava, they become oilois. So why are you limiting it to what? To moilois stumois. Let's go ahead and expand to mois mufurashos, that you should bring them as an oila. You can't, because it says rak. You can't bring chatos shemesa ba'alecha. In this case, the nazir is that died. She's not a nazir anymore. You cannot bring it as an oila because it says rak. Good, that's the din. Now he learned to din rak and asham as well. Rabbi Akiva just argues on asham. Says Rabbi Akiva, Omer, ain't it sarach? You don't need the pasuk to exclude asham from bringing as an oila. How do you omer? The pasuk says v'hiktir aisam hakoyen hamizbecha ishal Hashem. Asham who? What does Asham mean? By advice and Yehed. And Asham remains an Asham, it never changes. And therefore, it can't be bought as a Karban Oila. I don't need a pasuk for that. I only need it for what? For Chatas. Good? Chatas Yehed. It should be a Chatas. Okay? So let's summarize again. What did we do just so far this evening? Or this morning? This Erev Shabbos Chodesh. What did we do? Gishmak. We saw a Mishnah. The Mishnah said that you have moist before Roshais. What do you do with the money? You go ahead and you designate this. This is a chatas, it dies. The oil is an oil. The shlam is a shlam day and night, no lechem. What about stumois? If it's stam money, yiftul and a dove, they all go to a carbon oil. Frag the Gemara kasha. Even when it's stumois, how in the world does it totally go to an oil? You have mixed into the stumois what? Chatas and shlamim. The Gemara only has some chatas. Anyway, says Rabbi Yochanan, biskarech, halach l'mash b'sinai. If you have moist stumois, it's bought as a carbon dove, it's bought as oil. Says Reish Lakish, it's not true. The pasuk tells me the dharm that any neder becomes an adava, you bring as an oila. Says the Gemara, maybe if that's the case, any neder becomes an adava, even mifurashes as well. Since it was a neder, you set it aside as a neder. Now it turns into an adava because the nazir is not a nazir anymore. Maybe bring them all as carbon oilos. On that we can't do it because we have a limud from Rabbi Shmuel Rak that what only a tumuras asham or a vlad of a shlamim or a tumuras oila. Right? Well, not an asham. Forget asham. A shlamim and oila, those you bring as a carbon oila, and the shlam is a shlamim, and asham is excluded. The asham remains an asham, and the chatas is excluded. Since the chatas is excluded, there's no svara to say that before Russia should be born as an oila. How are we doing? Let's get the fingers. We're good. We're good. Yes. Harold, you good? He's out. Okay. Anyway. So okay, Kitani guys. Now what you know. You remember I showed you before in the Ziris, I was so excited to find Gufa. The Taisa said Gufa. He said that I always explain Gufa as we mentioned it as a question, Agav, and then Gufa will explain on itself. I said it's a Taisis. So I taught you Amamar. What does Amamar mean? We're going back over the Brisa to explain the things that Rabbi never taught you. Amamar, you're going back over the Brisa. Look at the word, look at Taisis on Ketani, guys, the small Taisis. You see the not the bottom one, the second one from the bottom. Ketani. Yachol Yala, Kimayam Amar. The Ketani in Nazir language, the lashon of Nazir being Mishun is Amamar. So now we're going back over the Brisa. It's Geshmak, right? Like this, it doesn't, like this, you just miss it. But now, Baruch Hashem, you got a little understanding, right? So Amamar, very Geshmak, Ketani. Taisus tells you, lashon Nazir is Mishuna. We know it's Mishuna. Ketani means Amamar. So Amamar means what? We're going now back over to analyze the Brisa. How are we doing, guys? We're Geshmak. This Friday morning, you're learning Torah. What could be better than that? Says the Gemara. Amar Amamar, Katani. Yachol Yala and the Beis Abachira v'Yimana Mehem Mayim u'Mazlim b'Shul Shimusu. I might think you can go ahead. You bring a Tumuras Oila and a Vlad Shlomim. You're going to bring them up, and what do you do over there? You let them die. You let them die. Fred the Gemara Tamalayma Vesisa Lesecha. No, you need a pasuk to tell me you don't let them die. Amai. Why do you need a pasuk? Havlad Chatas Hu the Gemiri Bar Misa. Only a Vlad Chatas do we have Allah Chamash B'Sinai that it dies. We don't have Allah Chamash B'Sinai by what? By an oila. You don't have Allah Chamash B'Sinai. In other words, where do you know and have a Havamina that you let this Vlad of the Shlomim and the Tumur of the oila die? The only place you know it from is what? Is from Chatas. But the Halach Chamash B'Sinai is limited to Chatas. Why would you have a Havamina that you need a pasuk to tell me otherwise? You only need a pasuk when you think there's a svara to say it dies. Why would you think that? The Gemiri is only the Chatas dies. So why would you need a pasuk for Shlomim and Oila? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Ilav Kro, if not for the pasuk of Rak, Havamina, I've not for the pasuk of right. Havamina Vlad Chatas b'chol makom. You know what? The halacha Moshe Sinai is not that the dying is limited to Chatas. The dying is limited that the Chatas dies anywhere, and there's no din of bringing it up to the Beis Hamikdash. But Vlade Kochim, however, the Vlad of a Shlomim, right, or the Tmuras of an Ayla, the Beis Habachira. Guys, what is the lashon of the pasuk? The lashon of the pasuk is the lashon of the pasuk is, and you should bring it up to the place. Oh, Asher Yifka Hashem. So I might think you have to bring it up to the Beis Hamikdash to die, but not that it doesn't die. Kamashmal the pasuk by Sisar Lesecha, you bring it as an Ayla. So therefore, the pasuk doesn't tell me that what the pasuk, the Allah Chamash B'Sin, I would limit it to anywhere. The pasuk would tell me if I want to have the pasuk, I would say it has to die. I would have to say it would die. I would say it dies. The Vlad Shlomim dies in the Beis Hamikdash. Kamashmalon that no, it doesn't die at all. You bring it as a carbon oil and the Shlomim as a Shlomim. Kamashmalon like Ketani again. Ketani over here is again Amamar. One more time. Ketani is another Amamar. Yachal af Vlad Chatas utmuras Asham Kain. I think the Vlad of a Chatas and the Tmuras Asham. Also, you bring as a carbon oila, Hamad Loimar, Rak. It says Rak. Now, here's the obvious question. Lamali Kra, why do you need a pasuk to tell me that the Vlad Chatas is not an oila? Hilchasa Gemirila, we have a lacham much we've seen it that Vlad Chatas Lemisa Azla. Rak, says Rabbi Shmuel. I would think that what? That the Vlad of a Chatas, for who I did all the other four, would go ahead and be brought as a carbon oila. Kamash Milan Rak, the pasuk tells me no, only what? Only a Shlomim and only an Oila, but not a Chatas. Fred the Gemara, why do I need the pasuk for? I have a Lachamash Sinai telling me it dies. Hachanami, you're right. I don't need the pasuk to tell me what? Chatas. That I know from the Lachamash Sinai. The Krola Ashamhu, the Rak of Rabbi Shmuel is only to Mayim Asham. Who the Asa? Says the Gemara, Asham Nami Hilchasa Gemirila. Okay, guys, outside. There's another halacha Moshe Sinai. The parallel, if you can't have the Vlad of an Asham, but you could have the four cases. You could have a Tmuras Asham, Asham She'ava Shnasa, Asham She'kipr Ba'leha, and Asham She'mes Ba'leha. So you can have what? You can have four by law, by Baal. It's Lashon Zacham. So you could go ahead and have what? Four cases. Those four cases, we have another halacha Moshe Sinai. Wherever it says that a Chatas is going to die, by an Asham, you put it out to graze till it gets a mum, and then you pay it. In order to be paid, guys, another kachim, basically in kachim is, all kachim is subject to B'diya under certain circumstances. If it's kachi, if it has kachi domim, if it has kedushas domim, meaning it's only kaddish for its worth, then you paid it, and usually you have to add a fifth or quarter, right? To whatever the price is, right? So it was worth $100, it's $125. What happens if it's kachi aguf? It's an animal. It's not kuchas daven, it's kuchas aguf. You're not able to be paida. Kuchas aguf, you can't be paida, except if it gets a mum. Once it gets a mum, and no longer is running to mizbeach, then you could be paida. So says the Gemara, by an asham, we have a following recital. If an asham is the Tmuras Asham, one of the four possible cases that it could be, which by Chatas would die. By Asham, which is a carbon, you let it graze until it gets a mum and you paid it. So Fred Marakasha, why do I need the pasuk of Rak go ahead to Imayit and Asham, the same halacha Moshe Sinai that tells me you don't need a pasuk for chatas, I have halacha Moshe Sinai to tell me I don't need a pasuk by Asham, that there's never a havamina to bring it as a carbon. You know why? Because you're supposed to graze it. That's the Gemara's kasha. Fred the Gemara kasha. So the Gemara kasha. Enochinami v'kro lo Asham udasa. Fred the Gemara 5 lines down. Asham nami hilchas l'gemiri lo. We have halacha Moshe Sinai by Asham. What's the halacha? Kol she'ilu b'chatos mesa b'Asham raya. Anything by a chatos that is going to go ahead and die, by an asham you let graze until it gets a ella eat. So you have to say a kasha and for the Gemara. If you just be soymich on the halacha l'moshe Sinai to let it graze without the lashon of rak havamina hilchasa, that's the halacha, let it graze. However, v'irak reve loy l'chayv alav loy klum, and I might think that you bring it as a carbon, you didn't do anything wrong. Okay, in other words, you're supposed to let it graze, but it has kedushas aguf and it doesn't have to die. So I would think if you bring it as a carbon, that it's good, it's not a problem. Kamash blankra, imakarvile koyim alavase. If you're going to go ahead, and you're going to go ahead and bring it as a carbon, you're going to be over nasei. So therefore, that's what the rak teaches me. Rak, a vlad of shlamim, the tmuras of an oila, you bring it as an oila, but not an ashan. You be mevatel the asay or bring it as an oila. You be mevatel it. So that's what I learned from the. If I just have lachamash b'sin, I won't know that. Now the pasuk teaches me that no, the asham would not be accepted. It's mevatel on asay. Okay, so we're good. Just one more going over Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, I don't need the rak for asham because there's asham hu. Rabbi Akiva ain't it sarich. You don't need the pasuk rak to exclude an asham. Haru oimer asham hu b'havai sihei. It says asham hu. Again, the pasuk is a pasuk in Vayikra Zayin. The hikter Islam hakoyin on mizbecha ishel Hashem. The koyin should be makbid on mizbeach as a fire offering to Hashem. Asham hu. It is an asham. Why do you have to say asham hu? That it's always an asham. B'avayi hey, it's always going to remain an asham. It's always asham hu b'avayi hey. Lama likra gemara gemirila kol shebechatas mesa b'asham raya. Why do I need a pasuk like Rabbi Akiva? The same kasha. You have the lachal Moshe Sinai. Says Gemara b'chiyasa kra l'durat. And for nam einachnam, you're right. You're right. You don't need the pasuk to memayit an asham to bring it as an oila. You can't. What do you need it for? You need it for Rav's din. What does Rav say? The Amarav, Huna Amarav, Asham shenitek l're'iyah. An asham that you gave over, nitak is the action of giving it over to the pastacha, giving over the Harold pastacha. What's a pastacha? A shepherd. Baruch, come on.
They had shepherds in Canarsie?
Baruch, you're busy. We need a Yiddish expert over here. You're busy with your phone. Anyway, so pastacha is a roya, is the shepherd. So the act of nitak is giving it over to the shepherd.
I thought you said pasta.
Pasta. Anyway, you don't need pasta. Anyway, asham shenitek l'riyah ushchatay l'shem oila kasha. Rav says an asham that you gave over to the roya before it got a mum, you bought it as a carbon oila. Taima the nitak. The reason it's kasha because you gave it over to the roya. Haloi nitak, but if you didn't go over to the roya, loy. Why not? Why is it an oila? Damakra hu b'avaisa yehi. Guys, what are you giving over to the roya? What's going to happen over here? Let's go through the motions. You're going to give it to the roya. It's going to go ahead, get a mum. You're going to be paid it. You know what you can do with that money? You're going to put it in the pushka for an oila. It's going to become an adava. In other words, the process of this asham is eventually going to end up as an oila. So the chiddush of Rav is that what? When do you say that? The chiddush of Rav is since eventually it's going to end up an oila. If you began the process by giving it to the shepherd, you can bring it as an oila. Masha Enkein, the pasuk says, if you did bring it off to the shepherd, no, it can't be an oila. Asham hu, it is an asham, it's not an oila, and therefore that's what it comes to teach me. Okay, everyone should have a good Shabbos. Thank you for listening. It's appreciated.